Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Haribol, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribol. Srila Prabhupada ki, Shri Shri Radha Shyam Sundar ki, Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari.
Good evening to everyone. A warm welcome to all the community mothers and Prabhujis here. And we are very, very fortunate to have Her Grace Arudha Mataji, her son Gopal Hari Prabhu and family. And would like to give a small intro about Mataji. Her Grace Arudha Mataji and her husband Anantarupa Das started a temple in Boise, USA in 1986 as a small weekly program in their home. Now 30 years later, there is a beautiful Vedic temple of Sri Sri Radha Banke Bihari. They homeschooled their son, Gopal Hari and Radhika Raman, using a curriculum based on Srimad Bhagavatam, translated by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. They completed their PhD from Oxford University in England at the age of 21. Arudha Mataji has been traveling around the world doing seminars on the art of Krishna consciousness parenting and how to teach Srimad Bhagavatam to children. She is the author of Homeschooling Krishna's Children, published by BBT. This book provides a complete guide to Krishna conscious parenting. With a team of parents from around the world, she has been working on Srimad Bhagavatam guide books for children. These guides provide children, parents, and teachers with a delightful way to study Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavatam, chapter by chapter. There are chapter summaries, key themes, analogies, critical thinking activities, and character descriptions with the aim of cultivating in our children a lifelong love for reading Srimad Bhagavatam. So, Mataji's already displayed her books at the back, and we are very, very grateful that Mataji is giving us her time, and Prabhu is giving us her time. There's a lot to take from her this evening, and we are looking forward for the seminar to start. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you, Prabhu. Also, I would like to introduce a little bit about Gopal Hari Prabhu. Gopal Hari Prabhu holds the Joy Distinguished Professorship in Ethics at Aurora University. He is the author of Maya in the Bhagavad-Gita Puran, Human Suffering and Divine Play, published by the Oxford University Press, and serves as the editor for the Journal of Hindu Christian Studies. He has been serving as a member of ISKCON Shastric Advisory Council. He completed his Doctor of Philosophy in Religious Studies and MSc in Science and Religion from the University of Oxford, UK. Before studying at Oxford, he completed his BS and MS degrees in Electrical Engineering from Boise State University at the age of 19. Gopal Hari Prabhu is a disciple of His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami and was homeschooled by his parents. And now he lives in USA, Chicago with his family. Thank you, Prabhuji, for enlightening us today. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Devaki, for a over generous introduction. Thank you. And I'm really, really so excited and so happy to be here. You cannot imagine how excited I am today, because I feel like I'm serving the Holy Dham by coming here. And that is why I had such a great desire to come to Vrindavan and do this seminar, just so I could serve the Holy Dham and its beautiful residents like yourself. I pay my obeisances to all of you. You all are such exalted souls to be able to live here. I feel very, very tiny in front of all of you. So here we are to do this seminar here. And so this seminar, just to give you a little bit idea what I'm going to be doing, this seminar is divided into 3 parts, okay? So it's based on that ISKCON motto, purity is the force, books are the basis, and preaching is the essence. And there's one more, utility is the principle, right? So we'll cover these 3 sections. And the reason is why I chose this format is because to help you see that how, raising children also, besides so many other activities that we have in Krishna consciousness, can be best done within Srila Prabhupada's movement. What Srila Prabhupada has given us, the process that he's given us, which basically are these 4 principles, really also involves, it can be utilized in raising children. In other words, there's no need to go outside to find things on how to raise children. I mean, there's so many books written, right? So many modern psychology books and this book and that on parenting. I mean, if you go to the library, there's so many books out there, right? But just based on my own humble experience, I want to show you, and also, from the research that I did on Srila Prabhupada's instructions that he gave us, that he gave in raising our children, I want to be able to present to you that actually what Srila Prabhupada gave us is enough to raise a wonderful child. Okay, so, and here is a beautiful quote by Srila Prabhupada himself, which kind of really, gives the essence. So I'm going to read this for you. If we train children by developing and encouraging their propensity to love Krishna, then we shall be successful in educating them to the topmost standard. Then they shall happily agree to do whatever you ask them. So here is really the essence of Srila Prabhupada's desires for our children. What he's saying is that if we raise our children as good devotees, then that is education. That is the topmost education. Because when I first, saw this quote, I was thinking, okay, I have to raise them as devotees, but then I have to take care of their academics. I was thinking these are 2 separate things, right? But what Srila Prabhupada is saying, that since everything comes from Krishna, and Krishna is the source of both material and spiritual, so if you make them as good devotees, they will naturally, all the opulences will follow. But if you do it the other way around, then things will not work so well, right? So in other words, our first criteria is to make sure that they are good devotees. And then everything else will follow. In other words, we don't, so this is what Srila Prabhupada, and we'll go to our next slide where Srila Prabhupada's vision for our children will be explained here, okay? So what is Srila Prabhupada's vision for our children? Now, among the 3 things that Srila Prabhupada stressed in it while he was here, right? Everybody knows the first one. What is that first one? Among the 3 things that was topmost on his list. Anybody can guess? The topmost things that were very dear to Srila Prabhupada. Book distribution? Yes. Book distribution, and then deity worship, and the third one is Gurukula, which is very top on the list, right? Srila Prabhupada was very, very keen on starting Gurukulas, and the reason is because he was really concerned. He was really concerned about the character education for our children. Really concerned about that. Because Srila Prabhupada said one very nice quote. He said, if we raise our children as exemplary Vaishnava preachers, that will be the glory of your movement, and that will be the glory of your country as well. In other words, Prabhupada said that if we raise our children to 3 things. He said, if they practice good sadhana, they study shastras, and they are good at giving the knowledge to others, that is perfect education for our children. Sadhana, shastric education, and being able to give it to others. Okay, and you see these 3 sections are exactly that, right? Purity is the first, which means building the whole environment, making it conducive for our children's spiritual growth, their sadhana, their inner growth, right? Books of the basis is the shastric education that Srila Prabhupada wanted. These 3 things is how to internally, intellectually make them strong. And the last one is giving it to others, which is preaching is the essence. So this was Srila Prabhupada's idea for starting Gurukulas is to do these three things. So this was Prabhupada. And the reason is because he understood that he knew that unless children have character, no matter how many good qualities we give them, obviously, it's just going to be like decorations on a dead body. We all know examples of people who are very educated or very, very rich. Are they happy? Does it mean that they have good character? Not at all, right? In fact, Prabhupada, you can see it's just the opposite, right? Not necessarily, that. So in other words, but Vedic education, Prabhupada said, is different. Why? Because Krishna is in the center. It's all about Krishna and his devotees. So when we study about Krishna and his devotees, naturally good qualities will follow. So people used to send their children. In India, only 50 years ago, influential people sent their children to Gurukula. Why? Why to Gurukula? Because of this character education. And influential people, they had everything. They didn't need to send their children to Gurukula. Yet they found it so important, so crucial that their children go to Gurukula. They were willing to part with their children for the first 10 or 12 years. Gurukula was only for 10 to 12 years. It wasn't all their life, right? Why? Because they knew the importance of teaching them, giving them these qualities. The qualities of, because that was a place where they could study Shastra and, learn the service mode, right? And then they could study, they could develop character, like qualities like self-control, tolerance, mercy, compassion, all these qualities. So what do we do if we don't have a Gurukula? But we do have a Gurukula, yeah. So there is one option. But it's a personal choice. I was just there, and I had a really nice meeting with about 50 teachers and everything. It's a beautiful Gurukula, right? But what about those people who are, who don't have that option, right? Who don't want to send their children to the Gurukula? Like, for example, somebody like me, I was in Boise, which is so far away. It was very difficult to, send my children all that way. There was no Gurukula close by. And also, besides, we started a center, and we needed them, frankly. We needed the help. Me and my husband trying to run a center and gradually expand would be very difficult. So it was not an option for me. So what about people like that, right? So can we follow Srila Prabhupada's desires and instructions for our children? Yes. If we simply make, make a home into a kula, which is an ashram, and the parents become a guru, right? But of course, a Gurukula's mood is different than a grahastha ashram. In other words, there has to be some adjustments. If you're staying at home and raising children, you can, and trying to follow Srila Prabhupada's instructions, they can be followed, but with a few adjustments, right? Some adjustments have, and this is what I try to do in our home. We had a center, like you mentioned, and we were running. So when my children, they turned like 5 years old, I started thinking about a school for them. I started looking around for a school, and like any other parent, really afraid of public schools because of all the things you hear about them. So I decided to send them to. We both decided to send them to a private school, thinking that private school is is better education and better quality in terms of moral values. So I sent them for 2 years to school, and I would volunteer time in the school because I was nervous. I was wondering I had just become a devotee a couple of years ago, and really wanting to practice and really kind of excited, fired up devotee type thing. And then so when I would volunteer time, and to tell you honestly, in both areas I was disappointed. In other words, academically and spiritually. Academically because, I one time sat in my older son's math class, and he finished his work 20 minutes before, and he had nothing to do. So he was just like wasting his time. So I noticed, okay, the school is for the average. If your child is above the average, he's kind of bored. And if he's below the average, then you're frustrated, basically. So academically I was thinking it's okay, but it's not that great, right? And then spiritually, needless to say, the values and everything, it's very easy to pick up things in the school, and my sons would come and tell me different things that were happening, with the teachers and everything. I mean, Gopal was in his class, there was a teacher, and the boyfriend would come, and they would behave a little bit intimately and all that, a little bit on the extreme, but things like that happened, right? So anyway, so we both was thinking, okay, do we have an alternative? And that's when we started investigating. And in America, homeschooling is a very big alternative education. Millions of people opt to do homeschooling. So, but we were very nervous. So what should we do? So what we decided is that, okay, in summer, I'll homeschool them. My husband was working, so I was the principal teacher. I would homeschool them, and if it works, then in 3 months, I can try it out. If not, then they can go back to school. A safe way to play, right? So I bought a curriculum. In America, you can buy a whole year's curriculum. You can actually buy it. So I thought, okay, I'm safe. I got my curriculum, let me try it for 3 months. And you won't believe, in 3 months, we finished the entire year's school. And they were only studying 2 hours a day. So it wasn't like, they were behind a desk for 8-9 hours. This was our agenda. In the morning, when they got up, we had a morning program. And then we studied Srimad Bhagavatam for about 2 hours a day. Just discussion, just fun discussion, We'd go read translations, and then I would open it up for discussion. And then one point would lead to another, like that. And then after that, we would go out into the city. Like, we had plans. And so I would, ahead of time, I would book programs, in the city. Like, there was a city calendar, and you could see what's going on in the city. So you'd go, and we'd have book tables and prashadam tables, and we'd do school programs, and so many programs in the city, all types of things. So we would spend a few hours doing that. And then in the afternoon, they'd come back, and we'd do Sanskrit music and memorization. Sanskrit music and math, right? So we do these 3 subjects in the afternoon. So basically, and things are very flexible. You know how it is when you're running a center, something or the other happens, right? And we had visiting sannyasis, and we had festivals. Well, then we would make it flexible. Okay, this goes away, that stays, But one thing I was very convinced about is Srimad Bhagavatam. Like, I would skip everything else, but I would not skip Bhagavatam. And that's why I kept it in the morning. And that's where my faith built up. You see, it was a faith that grew as I grew, as we all grew. It wasn't a faith that was there, right away. Like I said, I was a new devotee, and I had not even read Srimad Bhagavatam before. So I was reading it for the first time. So as I did things, my faith in the whole process that I was doing developed. So basically, this was my agenda, my program at home for my homeschooling things. So this seminar is not to try to convert you to homeschooling. This is not the purpose of this seminar. It was just my experience where this whole thing is coming from, But the idea behind this seminar is to develop that faith that you can raise nice children by understanding Srila Prabhupada's instructions for our children, and by reading Srimad Bhagavatam, even if they could be going to school outside, still it would have a very strong effect. Just by following these basic 3 things that I'm going to present to you, you can at least save them from the very grossest type of things, and also be able to raise nice children. Of course, if you're homeschooling them, it's the best. If you send them to a day Gurukula or you homeschool them, the association, they are able to avoid the bad association. Prabhupada said that there's 2 great blessings for a devotee. And what is that? to have the advantage of a spiritual master and to be born in a devotee family. Two greatest advantage, right? So in other words, these children are not ordinary, and therefore whatever we can do to protect them from the outside, materialistic environment obviously does help. But what I'm going to show you here is that by doing that, the main thing is that our parents are afraid is that by doing that, well, are we isolating them? What about the social issues? What about the association of other children? So all that, right? So the whole purpose is to show you also, by doing this, by following these three things that Srila Prabhupada said, we're not isolating them from the outside world. We are insulating them. A big difference, right? Like I just told you, that by exposing them to the outside world through our preaching programs, they were very much in the world for several hours a day, right? A few hours a day at least. So it was like exposing them, but not isolating them. So in other words, of course here it's different, right, in Vrindavan, but still there's so much going on, right, by which you can give them that exposure, but in a protected way. That's the main thing. People really think that if they raise their children through Srila Prabhupada's instructions, well, then the children cannot have a career, they cannot be worldly smart, they cannot, like that. But it's not true, They actually can be very balanced. But the advantage of following Srila Prabhupada's three-part process is that you make them into very good devotees, strong devotees. No matter whether they are going out into the world to follow a career, whether they're grahastha ashram, whichever ashram they are, they become spiritually very strong. And that is the whole purpose, is to give them that spiritual strength, that faith that we see in our children losing that faith over time. It's the problem in Gurukulas today, it's the problem among parents who send their children to school, big problem over there, right? How they can lose it so quickly, right? But also in Gurukula right now, parents are worried, what are my children going to stay devotees even coming out of a Gurukula? Because, so many, struggles, right, in Kali Yuga. So everybody is wondering that question, that big question is now, are they going to stay as devotees? Are we going to keep them as devotees? Especially as they're growing up, right? Well, my experience has been that if you can give them everything, but if you don't make that faith strong growing up, that faith as devotees through these three things, it doesn't last too long, especially faith in Shastra. And that's really the heart of my seminar, that we, both Gopal Hari and myself, will be talking about. But we want to quickly go through all the other sections also. And so now, this is our first section. Purity is the fourth. And we're going to be talking about some of the things that we should do and some of the things that we should avoid. In other words, what are the things? And so we're going to talk about what are the things, some of the things we should avoid in a home as we're raising our children. And then we'll later talk about some of the things that we should do. And one of the things that you can see here, avoiding television and limiting internet. And it's a very hot topic. I've been doing so many seminars since the last 3 weeks all over India, and it's like the hottest topic. So, and rightly so, because it is a huge problem right now. Especially with the COVID, things got worse and worse and worse. So let's talk about the things that we shouldn't do, and I'm going to have Gopal Hari do that, because he's more in date, more updated on, especially internet, That's a big thing, right?
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So, actually, one of my first surprises was many years ago when I came to Vrindavan. Was there's some discussion amongst the parents that the Gurukul children were hooked to cartoons, and that was the Vrindavan Gurukul children, some of them, and that was a big challenge that they were facing. So then I realized, oh, there's TV even in Vrindavan. I didn't realize that, but it's everywhere now, isn't it? So you have phones, TVs, internet. It's pervaded the entire world, every single town and village around the world. So Mother Urmila, she has a very nice way of describing the television set. She says it's the one-eyed guru. Right? It's the one-eyed guru that we have in our home. We give it a very nice high pedestal. We keep it there. Every evening the whole family comes in front of it and we listen to it, we hear it, we take instructions from it. Sometimes it's even in our bedroom, we bring it in. You have, so in our most, you could say, vulnerable, quiet moments of the day, we listen to this one-eyed guru, which is the television. And the problem is that we don't want to listen to this guru. We want to listen to the two-eyed guru. We want to listen to our spiritual masters. But we are listening to this guru, and this guru, it breaks the four regulated principles, right? So much of what they show on television is breaking the regulated principles. The same is true in terms of the internet, and especially true, can be very true about the internet. All four principles, meat eating, illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, are glorified in these television films, advertisements, and so they have an impact on us, right? Over time, television has an impact. They say the average child in America watches 6 hours of television every single day. I don't know what the statistic here is here in India, but that's 6 hours of our, that's basically free time. Kids go to school for 8 hours, they sleep for 8 to 10 hours, and then you have about 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours left in the day, and that's spent in watching television. So it used to be that in a family, when there's family time, when there are things, when people had some free time, a few hours in the evening, even in the Western world, someone would, pull out a violin, play some music, others would listen and clap. In Vrindavan, Bharatvarsh, in these places, someone brings out the harmonium, the kartal. They have some family time together by doing some music, or just conversation, or sitting around a table. But now everyone is hooked on the phone. And you go to an airport and you see 6 people and all 6 of them have their phone. You see in restaurants, it's like really surprising, just in cafes, they were like every person is sitting in the restaurant and they're eating, and the only thing they have with them is their phone. The only thing they're looking at or talking to is the phone while they're eating. So it's become a culture where children are forgetting how to communicate, how to have interpersonal relationships. They're looking for relationships in social media, but the problem with social media is that it's the most unsocial thing that you can have. They are losing the contact, the human touch. And the counter argument is that there are some very nice films, documentaries, even spiritual films and documentaries that come on television or that are available through the internet. And that is true. There are some very good resources, films, educational material, spiritual films on the internet and television. But even there we have to be a little careful. Just like they say that 1 glass of wine is good for your heart, good for your health. But the problem is, who stops at 1 glass of wine, right? So 1 glass of wine is good for you, but no one stops at 1 glass of wine. In the same way, there are some educational things that are good for, that are good. But if children use that medium too much, they eventually end up watching things that are not good for them. They end up, becoming addicted to it, attached to it, where then they are always craving for it. And rather than being interested in reading books or spending time with people, whenever they have a moment, they want to be on the phone or on the television or on the internet, right? just like my two children, Sita and Balaram, they're 3 and 6. And while they eat, we sometimes show them the Krishna, little Krishna, right? Because then they eat the food. It's the one time we're using it. But the problem is then they always want it. They become so attached to it, and they're like always trying to grab the phone from us. And the little one's just 3 years old. He's not even able to think rationally. He just wants to grab it. So gradually we're trying to get them off of it. So sometimes we can use it in emergency situations, in situations like that. But even if it has an educational value, we have to understand that the educational value is only till a certain point, and it's hard to keep it under that point. The other point is that many studies have been done in terms of learning through technology, like iPads and TVs and all these things. And what people find is that these mediums make a person intellectually lazy. They make the student intellectually lazy. So even though, yes, they're learning through it, but their attention span becomes very short because it's a stimulation. They want the dopamine, so every few minutes they want the scene to change. Every few minutes they want a text message to come. So their attention span becomes really short, and they become less creative. This is a very important one. They're less creative. So if you watch TV or film, then both your audio and visual are given to you. So you just have to see it. It's a one-way transmission. You can be a couch potato, you just see it and everything is downloaded, right? So no creativity is necessary because everything is there. If we hear the radio, then we're hearing, but we're not seeing. So the child still has to visualize it. And that's why hearing is actually a nice thing. Very good. People who study how children learn, they agree to that point. This is why hearing Amala Bhakta Prabhu's Krishna book narrations is very nice. Because he's describing, here's the river Yamuna and Kaliya, and they're having, Krishna's playing. And the child has to imagine, how did Kaliya look? How was the water splashing? How was Krishna dancing? Right? So there's a lot of creativity that happens. And my daughter Sita, I remember, when she was 4 or 5, she would sometimes go into a imaginative space. We would go into the room, and when she was alone, and she would be imagining something. We'd walk in, and she'd just be like, "Why'd you come in?" Like I was in the middle of something. She was imagining. So children actually learn a lot from imagination. When they imagine, in a material context, Alice in Wonderland or this or that, their imagination is very important, and this encourages them to imagine, to create a scene that they're hearing in their mind. And when we read a book, then we have to use both the creativity of how it sounds and how it looks. The child is reading, it's an active process, so it's not given to him. They have to work to read. And then the mind has to imagine what it would sound like and what it would look like in real life. So you can imagine the mind is working so much more. The brain is working so much more when you read it. So if the same thing we learn through a video versus we learn through a book, the child will retain more and become more creative and more, you have a longer attention span if they learn it through a book than an iPad. And this is why technology is not the best medium for teaching children. It should not be the replacement for books. It should not be, overused. So then what is the use of technology? They also have to learn technology. We live in a world that is, connected, that is plugged in. You can't even get from point A to B without a cell phone. So what is the use? Technology, any form of technology, the internet, the cell phone, should be used as a tool. That's what it is. It's a tool. That's what it's good for. You use it as a tool, and once you've used it, you keep it away. So it's just like using a hammer. Right? We use a hammer to hammer in, a nail. And then once we're done using it, we keep it away. We don't take the hammer with us everywhere. We're like, okay, let's take a hammer in our backpack. We're going to have prasadam, keep a hammer just in case you need a hammer there. We're going for darshan, let's have a hammer in our backpack. No, the hammer has its use. The hammer is to hammer and nails. Once you're done, you keep it away. Then the rest of the day, you don't need it. And the same thing is with the phone, with the computer, and the television. And we use it when we need it. The child, needs to learn how to, search on Google. They search, they find their answer. Then that's, they spend 20 minutes a day using it, and then it's put away. And in that way, technology can be effective. They can also learn how to use it, be like in tune with modern day trends. So they're, if needed, they know how to use a phone, they know how to use a computer, they can learn typing, they can, use it for email, but then it's put away. So these are the thoughts that come to my mind regarding technology.
Thank you, Gopal. This is good. I think you also mentioned once that how, it used to be that the scene would, when they made a movie, the scene would change every minute, but now it's come down to 15 seconds. And the attention span is reducing to such an extent that it's getting less and less and less. Okay? And they've also done not some of the horrors of their studies. You know how studies have been done about everything. So they're saying that how, so I forgot what the. Yeah. The other thing is, in America, they've done research that the problem is that because there is no good source, and how it's like Maya's biggest tool, the screen, right? So you can get so quickly to a website so easily, and it could be a very objectionable website. In other words, the child can be subjected to sexual association very quickly. It's not something that the child is looking for. He or she is not looking for that, but it just happens. It says, so objectionable sites, the child goes into it accidentally. And that's what they found in America, that children, like 10% of children below 10, they are addicted to pornography. Not of their choice. It's just 2 clicks away. They're browsing on it, and they could get on it. And they are suffering so much, they don't know what to do. They're addicted, they can't go to their parents, and they know it's something they need to get out of. So like that. And of course, what to speak of above 18 section, And don't think it's just in America. Just 11 months ago, I was doing seminars in India, and there were a couple mothers who came crying to me and said, my children are addicted to pornography, just accidentally, and she didn't know how to deal with it. So in other words, it's everywhere. This problem is everywhere. Television, you can still control the channels, right? But there's no way to control the internet. And I see the reason why we speak on this is because a lot of parents, they are not aware that what's going on out there. So it's good to get educated. It's good to know about it, what's going on, the dangers. And then we'll be empowered, be able to take the right steps. Until we know what's going on. And there's so much out there, there's so much, the statistics are showing that suicide rate among the children is skyrocketing due to social media. There's so much pressure among young people, because they see their approval through social media. And social media is it's a fake world. It's not a real world. They think, okay, that person is so happy, I have to be like that person, right? So they're trying to see their approval not through their family members, not through their parents, how good I am, how nice I look. It used to be like that. You go to your parents, say, am I looking nice? Am I looking nice? And the parents say, yeah, you're looking so nice. Now, where is their approval? Through their friends, through social media. So all these things, they say. Now, also another thing which I found very interesting, Steve Jobs, who was the owner of iPhones, he was interviewed by a reporter one time who asked him, wow, your children must be having the latest, iPhones, and they must be so lucky and fortunate. And Steve Jobs said, they don't even have it. They don't even own it. I don't even give it to them. Imagine. And Silicon Valley in California, You know, there's a school there, 75% of the children don't own any smartphones until they're out of school or something. And these are the people, children of people or parents who work for those industries. Because they know how bad it is. They don't want to give their children, but we get sucked into it, right? Right? So, yeah, because they know the dangers. So in other words, we have to be very, very careful. There's a show in America done by a person called Ted, and he's done a lot of, he interviews young people and he gets into really getting, because he does it as an educational thing to show the parents how dangerous he is. According to him, this is never too late to just take it away from them. If you've given them very early in their life and you see problems coming up, just take it away. It's one of those things that it can be too late. It can be too late, and you don't want to wait for that. So people come to me during seminars, to both of us, and they ask, well, I can't take it away at this point, but I know there's problems. I see him addicted. So many parents came to me in India where they said, oh, I want to take it away, but he's threatened me. If I take it away, he's going to run away, or he's still going to take his life. And they're genuinely scared. I said, it's not true. He is not going to take his life. He's just threatening you. So in other words, we have to learn, like Gopal said, we have to learn to teach them how to use it responsibly and not to give it to them early in their life. Just to wait as long as you can. In Gurukula, it's a huge problem, right? Addiction to smartphones. It's a fact. It's a fact. And the problem is that parents who do want to control, they're not able to because other children also, they have it. So there's a huge problem, how to tell your own child. And that's where this seminar comes in, where I'm not so much, knowledgeable about Gurukulas, and how they function. But I know from from just by doing seminars and talking to parents that, even if the community, even if the devotee community, and if your child is going to school and picking all this from karmi children, even if they are doing all that, still your child can say no to it. You can encourage, you can train your children to say no to that. How? It's again Shastric knowledge of the Shastras, that good home environment, strong environment at home, loving, strong environment at home, example of parents, giving them the faith, giving them the substitute, engaging in so many preaching programs, so many substitution is there, where the child is feeling, wow, I'm doing this and I'm doing that, I'm doing school program. We were doing prison programs once a month. We have to give our children alternatives. We can't just sit and think, okay, well, what do I do then? How do you engage? This is the question parents come up. If I don't give them this, then what are they going to do? How am I going to engage them? Life has become so busy. So the problem is there is no substitute other than engaging them. And that too, engagement in Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada has given us so many options, so many activities out there. And if you think about it, if we engage them in those activities, a child is not going to crave for a smartphone. My children they never missed it. And when they were older, they had smartphones, and by then how to, with this kind of upbringing, how to use things responsibly, right? So it's not true that we are helpless. We can help our children to be strong. So we'll move on here. So we'll go to now the positives. What are some of the things we can do to help our children to give them a spiritual atmosphere, environment. And the first thing is the morning program. Srila Prabhupada actually said the children don't need any restrictions. Need to go through any austerities. They can eat as much as they like, run around, play around. He used to actually tell the Gurukula teachers, Don't stop them if they overeat. It's okay if children overeat. It's okay if they want to play. It's nature of child to play. But there was one austerity that he wanted for them, and that was to get up for morning program. As you know, in the Gurukulas, children wake up, right? So that he was very particular, because he knew that would give, help the child become clean inside and outside, right? Of course, there are challenges, right? Especially in Grihast life, I was facing so much challenge. Prabhupada's standards are 4:30, and I could not make it. I could not make it for my children, right? So what to do? So I thought, okay, I still have to, the instruction is there, I just have to make it a little bit flexible, right? So what I did was, whenever they woke up, the first thing that we did was a morning program. And the idea behind it is that they develop good habits. There's a child who grows up throughout his life getting up for a morning program. He's not going to just give it up when he goes away to college. Those habits go very deep. They become a habit. Right? So this is the flexibility I did. Okay, I'm going to follow this instruction, but I cannot make it, because we had festivals. It was a center, right? It would get very late at night. It's hard to wake them up. My husband had a job where he went late and came late at home. Well, they would never see their dad, and they would wait for him. So all these, a lot of things, struggles were there. Of course, our effort should be to put them, if you can, you should put them to bed and do wake them up for a Mangalarti for 4:30. And there are a few families I know who do it successfully as Grihasthas. But the point is, if you cannot do it, but don't give it up completely, altogether. Always, I can do it, so let's forget it. So there's flexibility, and that's where the utility is the principle, right? The fourth thing, flexibility, right? And so we can do that. And of course, also it's hard to do a long morning program, with children at home. So you can shorten it, you can make it flexible. But the point that Srila Prabhupada really stressed was it should be joyful. Children need to experience the joys of Krishna consciousness. Until they see how fun and joyful Krishna consciousness, they cannot accept it. There's too much out there, temptation for them. Too much competition for them. Okay, so this is something.
Maybe I can just add that our morning program was not, generally at 4:30 in the morning. It was always the first thing in the day. So whenever they wake up, then the first thing the children should just think about that. Oh, of course, we'll be singing Sansara Dava and maybe chanting a few rounds. And later on, we'll also talk about chanting japa. Right now or later? Okay, do it right now?
Just make it short,
okay.
Yeah.
So, like chanting japa, it's very hard, that's one of the challenges. Children don't want to chant japa. And the key thing that we found is that the japa should somehow gradually be something positive in their mind. It should be presented as something very positive. So chanting with them, chanting together, let's chant one round together, it leaves a positive impression that, okay, this is something we do together, it's something that is fun. Japa should never be given as a punishment. So it should never be presented that, well, if you'll be naughty, then you have to chant one round. If you misbehave, then now, okay, you're grounded and you have to chant 2 rounds. So what that does is that leaves the impression that chanting is a form of punishment. Right? When I'm naughty, when I'm bad, then I chant 2 rounds. Which seems like a natural thing to do. It's like, he's going to sit in the corner anyway, might as well have him chant, right? But we don't want to leave that impression. Similarly, chanting should also not be a prize for doing something good. That, well, if you study, then, what I meant was, what I meant was opposite. That similarly, they should not get a prize for chanting. So if you chant 2 rounds, then you'll get an ice cream. Because again, it's like, okay, if you do the hard work, if you do something that's not fun, then you'll get something that's nice and fun, which is the ice cream. Chanting should be something that is fun in of itself. You know, if you do this, then the prize will be we'll get to sit and chant for 10 minutes, or it's just gradually. So we were doing 1 or 2 rounds, and then one time my Guru Maharaj, Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, was visiting Boise, and I was about maybe 8-9 years old at that time, and so he said you should chant the number of rounds as the same as your age. So whatever is your age, you should chant. So that kind of made sense to us. We were like, okay, 8 rounds, 8 years old, we can do that. So we started chanting according to our age. And then at each birthday, then we would increase it. Then you're 9, you do 9 rounds, 10 rounds. And then by the time we were 14, then it's like, well, we're just 2 away from 16 anyway, so might as well we do all 16. So that's how our chanting increased. Was we got one excuse, that we'll do it by the number of years and the rounds and match them. So like this, just finding something that will motivate them to chant, and the more classes they hear, the more they read Bhagavatam, these points get reinforced. The importance of chanting, the effect of chanting is all there. Maybe attending a japa retreat with Bhurijan Prabhu, Sachinandan Swami, that will inspire them because they'll hear it from someone else. They'll do it with a group. So we have to be creative in finding ways to inspire them to chant for its own benefit. And again, it doesn't have to be done 5 in the morning. It can be done whenever they wake up at 8 in the morning, but they know that this is the first thing that I do in my life. And I remember when I went to college and whenever I was, somehow it was in my habit that, first thing you do is you wake up and you shower and you chant, or you do a small morning program. And that stays with you then.
Thank you. So eating prasadam. So Srila Prabhupada said that if you just do this one thing, just follow this one principle, just eat only prasadam all your life, you go back to Godhead. Where did you hear that, Gopal?
There's one quote.
Srila Prabhupada?
If you just make this vow that I will only eat Krishna prasadam throughout my life, and if you just eat Krishna prasadam throughout your life, then Prabhupada says you'll go back to Godhead.
So you can see how important this is, right? So if it's important for us, it's even more important for children, right? Especially small children. It's very difficult. Why? They are understanding the whole world through their tongue, right? They're so restless. They want to taste different things. So it becomes a little tough, right? It's so easy. Things are available there. Of course, temple also you can find things. At least it's prasadam, right? But if you live in the West like we do, it's really tough because there's no restaurants, nothing. If you want something, you have to cook. If you want sweets, you have to cook. So it's austere, right? But then, if you Prabhupada is saying it's very important. Why? Because there's food that hits our consciousness, that affects our consciousness. And it's not very difficult to understand that, right? How food affects our consciousness. Your own experience, you sometimes eat something non-prasadam and immediately you feel it, right? And the example that Srila Prabhupada gave is like the artist, the type of drawing he makes, you're affected by it, right? So, Lord Chaitanya, that was his weapon, was chanting of the holy name and eating prasadam. And look what he did, right? How many hearts has been changed through these two things. So we should not be lax about it with our children, because nowadays the tendency among us is to just, it's something you try to do, but it's not like very important. It's okay. There's so many things available. But Srila Prabhupada said we are not vegetarians, we are Krishnatarians, right? So it's important that we have. And my husband was a very good example for that. He had a traveling job, and many times his travels would take him to far off places, and I would cook for him for, a lot, sometimes for several weeks, because it was something that was taking him for a long time. And he stuck to it. And then when he ran out, then he would find dates and nuts and salads to survive. So it had a very big impression on it, right? Gopal, you want to speak on that? Yeah. So anyway, so that was a nice example for our children. When we also follow those principles, it really affects our children. They realize, oh, if my father can do it, if my mother can do it, I can do it too. Because children really look up to their parents. You know, a lot of that character formation is done by the parents. You know, children who, they're very much affected, even if they're going to Gurukula. The example that parents set at home of these children who are going to Gurukula, they end up coming out better. Because we cannot give parents, you know, we may send them to Gurukula, but still we cannot give up our responsibility of influencing our children as parents by a good example and the training that we give them. Even children in Gurukula do better with strong parents, nice, good parents. So, and then of course the question comes about how to keep them in that, especially when there's so much available, especially when children are going to school and there's so many pizza parties and this party, and especially when even at work, fathers are struggling with, you know, office parties, what to eat, what to say. Gopal, you want to say something about that? Your own experience, perhaps? Yeah.
I don't know how relevant that is here in Vrindavan, but like people who go to like work in a big corporation, in a company, and they have 8 to 5 jobs. There's many work occasions that you have to go to. It's like you have to go to like some the boss is taking you out for lunch and everyone eats. And one thing that we find is that if one thing that's good is that if from the very beginning we set our standards, like they know that this person always takes a salad, then later on, then they don't get offended when we change. Otherwise, if you start, it's true with relatives also, and if you start lax, then when you change, then they feel offended that what happened now? Why aren't you accepting my food now? Why are you feeling so spiritual now? And you think, oh, we're not as good. But in the beginning, it's good to do it from the beginning. And especially in the Western world, people now really respect a salad as a meal. They think, oh, you're really healthy if you're just taking a salad, right? You're really like, oh, I should also eat like that. So we can go anywhere and also eat, but we just eat a salad or fruits and offer it, and then that's a good meal. So.
One line that we would do in America was that, people, you invite them to eat prasadam, then they want to invite you back, right? So what do you do? Like that. A lot of struggles like that. So we had one line that we would say that we don't eat food that's cooked in a kitchen that cooks meat. Otherwise, they put food in front of you and they say, I promise you this is vegetarian. It's 100% vegetarian. But you know it's not vegetarian, right? So if you tell them that you don't eat food in a kitchen that cooks meat, the problem is solved. Right? And my husband followed that line. When they grow older, they follow that line. And then people respect you, okay? Just like, the Jewish people have their kosher rules, right? They respect that. So they can understand, okay, this is a principle that you follow. So you can think of different things and kind of, as a family, stick to that. And the child actually gets very excited. Because I remember Gopal, when we would have to say all these lines, he wrote in that homeschooling book that how he was always excited because when the children have their support of their parents, they actually become very strong. They don't have a problem. It's only when we get weak, then they also get weak. You see? So as parents, we become strong by doing it ourselves, following certain principles, and sticking to it, then our children will also do that. Okay. And of course, the other way was we were taking big pots of food wherever. Like when my husband had office parties, we'd take 2 big pots of pakoras and rice. So you can fill up and others people can. So there's no need to take their food. So this is another trick. Always take prasadam, one big pot of pakoras or something, and my children would make themselves full with that, you know. So there's ways you can get around it. In other words, we just see the value and just work according to that. Good association. This is one of the last ones in this section. We'll quickly have to move on. So just like good association is good for us, it's good for our children. Very simple. Especially for our children. And Srila Prabhupada gave us a lot of wonderful instructions for our children. And what he mainly said was a couple things, is that children also need adult association. And it's more important than peer association. But he didn't say that they should not have friends, they should not, because he always would mention how they need to have fun and frolic and have fun, right? So nobody's denying that. But when we give them, for children who are going to 8 hours to school, you know, and they're coming home and then they have their homework, especially in India, you get tutors also and so many things, right? So when they have so much schoolwork, where is the time when they spend enough time with adults? You know, Prabhupada used to say, if children are basically fools, I mean, they're learning, right? They're children, right? So if they only associate with fools, then they just become fools. He put so much importance in good adult association. Actually, he said that the children do whatever the elders are doing. He says there's no need for separate program for them, you know, because they simply do what the adults are doing, you know. So adult association, and now we see so much problem because of this lack of adult association for our children. We see that there's a huge generation gap. You ever wonder what is this generation, how does this generation gap happen? And how as devotees our children don't even need to experience generation gap. Is when the children are with the other children so many hours a day and have no access to adult association, they develop their own habits. So you see, the young people are now their own species in life. They have their own music, they have their own language, they have their own dress, they have their own food. They don't like to connect with adults anymore. And what is the result of that? The result is that they lack responsibility. You learn responsibility when you're with adults, right? At home, you know, you try to teach them, okay, you need to do this or that, right? Help out with the laundry. So there's a huge generation gap. Now you see in schools, and also in schools it doesn't help. Because what are the teachers teaching? You don't need to be obedient to your parents. This is what teachers are teaching children. You listen to me, your parents are not so very important. In India and in the West, everywhere, the parents are not given, you know, they're not treated as revered members anymore, right? So in other words, so the parents are losing that ability to be able to influence the children, right? There's so many authorities now. It used to be the parents used to be authority, right? Now, what are the authorities? The teachers. And the caliber of the teachers, you know, in schools. Prabhupada said you cannot be a teacher if you drink and smoke, right? Teachers. Then television, internet. These are all authorities. And they're very, very strong authorities. So you see, how do we counteract all these authorities? By giving them this good association, the higher taste, the good association. The association of sannyasis, gurus. What else? The association of, you know, taking them out in activities where they can get good association. We were taking our children on vacation, Braj Mandal Parikram. Imagine for 1 month the type of association they had in Braj Mandal, in Braj. It's going to affect their Krishna consciousness. It's going to develop their faith. If for 1 month they're walking Braj and they're hearing Krishna's pastimes and they're with these wonderful devotees and sannyasis, and sometimes they visit, right? Mainly a lot of wonderful devotees who are walking with us. So these are the ways to find good association for them. Good association doesn't mean just coming to the temple where you find that good. It means everywhere, trying to find avenues where we can give that association to them. Rath Yatras, going there, vacations. So like that, trying to find wonderful association with them. And of course, sannyasis and gurus, they are very, very powerful association for our children. You want to say something on that? Sannyas, your own experience? Really quickly though, Gopal.
As we got older, then we would have the opportunity to sometimes travel with the visiting sannyasis who would come to Boise. We were a very small place, so we had only a few coming. And one of them was Ganapati Swami. He's a very, very wonderful person, and he would be distributing books on a camper. To this day, he goes to the Grand Canyon and he distributes there. And so once a year, he would come to India, and I still remember coming with him to India, to Calcutta, to Mayapur, and spending time with him and my own Guru Maharaj, Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. I traveled with him on many occasions. They would extend themselves by taking us, being young, we were, sometimes a handful for them. It was extra burden for them. And for us, it was a very, very impressionable event to be with them and serve them to as much as we could. I once remember I packed too much luggage. So we came to Calcutta and we had we were little, but my brother and I, we had these big luggages because my mother wanted to make sure we had everything. And so Ganapati Swami saw this and he said, okay, this is your luggage. Now just make sure that you can carry your own luggage and don't engage the devotees in your service. So we were trying to drag this luggage along, and we soon realized that we had too much luggage. So at the next stop, we emptied out some of it and lightened it up. So just these small things like this, you learn from them, which, parents by nature can be very soft in certain areas. They can spoil the children. And by having association of other senior devotees, any senior devotees, we were boys, so it was more with them, but also senior Matajis and senior householders. They can, the relationship is more formal, so they can teach the children sometimes things that the parents cannot. So it's a very, very, powerful experience, and a bit risky, but it's worth the risk. It's we were small kids going alone to India with Maharaj, but it was a very good experience.
I think one time you were telling me that in the train, he would wake them up for Mangalarti, and they would be so sleepy, and then they would do Mangalarti, and he said, now you can go back to sleep. He was so nice. So anyway, these things stay, right? These experiences, they stay with you. One time, Gopal, you were telling me that he came to Boise and he was asking, how many times a week do you get up for Mangalarti? Remember?
Yes, so this is once we were a bit older, again. So he asked us, actually we had started college at this time. We were 13, 14. And he asked, what are your grades at college? And we said A's and sometimes B's, A's and B's. So then he said, and how many days of the week are you waking up in the morning for your morning program? And we said 2 out of 7 days. So he says, what's 2 out of 7? It's that's an F, that's failing. He said, so your material grades are A's and B's, but your spiritual grade is a D and F. He said, you have to find a balance somewhere. There should be a balance,
So these things run deep. You remember them, and then you work. We can tell them, but it's a different thing when they, when they tell you. It has a very, very strong effect. So anyway, I think I'm going to stop here in this section, and we're going to move to the next section. But before I do that, very quickly, I'm going to take a few questions on this section, and then we'll move on to our new second section, which is books are the basis. which is really the heart of the seminar, so I don't want to miss that. Anybody has any questions on this first part that we just covered? Yes, yes, Devki.
Thank you, Mataji. It was so wonderful until now. So it's like, for me, sometimes I see like my children, they have cousins, and they live in the city. And in the city, obviously, the vibration and the habits of other children are like quite contaminated. So if you can give me more ideas or more guidance, like how do I mean, obviously, when they are by themselves, they are quite convinced what they are doing. But then, as children, it's so easy for them to just pick up and get influenced in the matter of days.
Yes.
And so how do I make more support for them in this matter?
Very good question. Very common struggle that parents faced, What about the association? They go to friends' homes or relatives, especially relatives, and they're very strongly influenced because they may be their cousins and all that. And that's why the second part is coming up. Books are the basis, you see. That's because children should be able to be there and yet not get affected, you see. That's the whole point. We can't protect them and put them in a cocoon, you see. This is how the nature of this material world is. They're going to school, they're picking up this and that, they're going to relatives' homes. How do you can't give them a sterile environment, right? It's not possible. So how do you make them strong? That's why we have to, this whole process, these books are the basis. Purity is the force. The morning program, that's doing the internal part to them, right? Then the books are the basis, the Shastic part, which is feeding the intelligence, where they understand why they don't do, even though others are doing, without demonizing them. That's the main thing. We don't want to make them fanatical. Okay? We don't want to create a picture that everybody, my relatives are demoniac or others are demoniac. See, I'm so special. I'm so saintly, right? We don't want to give them the feeling. That's where the third part comes, which is preaching is the essence. And preaching is the essence. What does that do? When they preach, they develop compassion. They see, oh, there's so many people out there who don't follow this, but yet, so we try to give them this knowledge. Very important, this balance, making them internally strong, but at the same time, making them compassionate towards others. Okay. Is that okay, Devaki? Does that answer? Anybody has any more? Otherwise, we'll move on. Yes, Martha, you want?
Chanting has to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you initiate that, like this one?
Just chant with them. If they're doing one round, chant with them.
Okay.
Your husband or you. Somebody has to chant with them.
With him.
Yeah. So then they feel like, oh, they're not being punished by it.
Yeah.
And if they chant alone, they develop bad habits also. Because they may not do it nicely and they may tell you, or they may even lie. Oh, I've done my one round. But they haven't really done it, right? So it's good to chant with them. Okay? Even if they go up to 4, you've got 16, right? Okay? So you can do 4. Okay? Is to give them. What? Oh, it's okay. Atul, aage badh rahe hain. Let's go on. No, it's okay. Yeah, let's move on. Right? Okay, let's go on to the next one. Next section. Good parenting means having. Okay, so we're talking about now the second section, which is teaching our children Srimad Bhagavatam. Gopal, would you like to read this for me? These are some very nice quotes by Srila Prabhupada. And these are only a few of the many, many quotes that Prabhupada has given regarding teaching, the importance of Srimad Bhagavatam. And in these quotes you'll see he's talking about the importance of studying Srimad Bhagavatam with our children, why it's so important.
Our students specifically, they should take care of reading Srimad Bhagavatam. We have therefore prescribed in our school, Dallas, and from the very beginning, if they begin education with Bhagavad-Gita and then come to Srimad Bhagavatam and read the whole literature, then they will be more than MA PhD. Even astronomy, astrology, politics, sociology, atomic theory, everything is there. Therefore, if we study Srimad Bhagavatam very carefully, then you get all knowledge completely. Throughout the whole world, whatever knowledge is there is in the Srimad Bhagavatam. If one simply reads this Srimad Bhagavatam, his education is the topmost. If one studies Srimad Bhagavatam, he is well versed in every subject matter.
So, you can see what Srila Prabhupada here is saying, right? So, first of all, he's saying that they will be more than MA PhD. That's the caliber of Srila Prabhupada's books. It's very, very high. And I had a direct experience of that. We were reading Srimad Bhagavatam every day, and when they went, their going to college was totally accidental. I would never ever dream of putting my kids in college early on. And we were running the Govinda's restaurant, and somebody came in, and he happened to be a teacher, a professor in the English department, chairman of the English department, local university in Boise. And he would come and eat. And he noticed that the kids were speaking really good English. And he was very impressed, and he said, I know you're homeschooling them. Would you like to, maybe you should give them a class at the university, just one class. And I thought he's just joking. I said, they're only 12 years old. And they were big, tall boys. So they looked older, much older than what they were. So I said, well, how will it work? They're so young. He said, no, it's okay. They can just take one class. Why don't you try for that? And he suggested I go and talk to the dean of the college, of the university. So I thought, okay, well, this doesn't sound too bad, because I'm running a restaurant, I'm trying to do this and that. This way they'll be engaged, something. So, so we went to the dean and we tried to convince him, and he said, well, the kids are too young, and his biggest concern was emotionally how they're going to fit with kids so much older 6 years older than them. But he was willing to give it a chance. And he says, okay, they can go if they get permission from the teacher, and she's okay with it, or he's okay with it. So we went and did all that, and to the dean, what we were showing him was just different devotional things that they had done in the area of writing. So anyway, so we got permission and everything. And so in other words, what I'm trying to say that the whole thing was very accidental. It's not something. But what was happening is that they went to college. My older son, went at the age of 12. He took one class. And when he went to that class, the first level class was full. So he thought, well, that's the end of it. So this teacher said, no, you try for the second level class. So he tried for the second, and that was full. Then he said, no, go and let him try. He was so impressed. He said, no, let him try for the honors class. I said, there's no way. We've never done anything other than Bhagavatam. And this would mean what? Shakespeare and this and that. He said, no, try. So even that was full. Then he said, try for the second year honors class, which is the last one, right? And it had a few seats left. So, just to cut the story short, he was able to get in. And he had a syllabus of Shakespeare, Hamlet, Odyssey, Homer's Odyssey, and Mexican writers and things like all classics. And this child had never done anything before. And of course, he writes about his experience, walking into a room, 6 years older, all the kids are so much older. He doesn't know what to expect. But because of the training in Srimad Bhagavatam, everything fell into place. In other words, even books like Shakespeare and classical writers, they're not a big deal, right? Because Srimad Bhagavatam is giving the highest knowledge. The critical thinking skills that's needed in understanding Srimad Bhagavatam is way beyond anything that you can find among any classics. So anyway, this is a long story, but he did so well that the teacher was really surprised, and she gave him a straight A. And he couldn't understand, what was going on, right? So anyway, and this happened with Gopal also. So in other words, I got convinced that what Srila Prabhupada is saying, it is MA PhD. In other words, if you make a child strong in 2 subjects, English and math, then you have pretty much set him for anything in the world. English becomes the basis for all humanities, and math becomes the basis for all sciences. So 2 things, if you make child strong, he can cover any subject, and this was our experience. English became strong through Srimad Bhagavatam, and we had a math book, right? And because of the English being strong through Srimad Bhagavatam, they were able to do first time in college subjects like psychology, anthropology, sociology, even sciences like chemistry and physics. This is Srimad Bhagavatam. When Srila Prabhupada says it's more than MA PhD, it is more than MA PhD. He's not just saying it. So a little bit later about that. And the second part of this quotation is about how it covers every subject matter in the world. So if we give them a foundation of Srimad Bhagavatam, which covers every subject matter, so that when they do those other subjects in schools or in the world, they get a good Vedic foundation on it. They first get a Vedic foundation so that they are not influenced by atheistic, materialistic views. Because you've already given them the theistic view through Srimad Bhagavatam. Otherwise, what happens is when they go to college and they do modern science with all these modern scientific theories, Big Bang and this, that, Darwin theory and this theory, when they are exposed to all that, they do get affected. I know devotees, academic scholars who were affected by that. What to speak of other children? So many people, so many Indian people, they come to the West, IIT, educated, they're all atheists. By the time you go through IITs and all that, they completely make you atheist. There's no way to survive through that. Because this becomes your study for years and years. And what to speak of when you pick it up as a career, right? You become a scientist or something. How is it possible that these scientists, that Srila Prabhupada created, that they were able to survive? It's because of this Shastric knowledge, this theistic knowledge that Srimad, such strong faith that they give in Krishna and the Vedic conception, that they are able to survive any version, any type of atheistic thinking. And that can only last unless we through Srimad Bhagavatam. Otherwise, it's impossible. When you don't see, because Srimad Bhagavatam just makes everything so rational and so believable, right? So this is what Srila Prabhupada is saying. That give this Vedic foundation from early on. If your children are already older, it doesn't matter. Dr. Sarup Damodar Maharaj, he came into Krishna consciousness much later, right? So many wonderful devotees, Sadhaputta Prabhu and all these people, right? So it's not like, okay, it's too late now. So we'll go quickly through spiritual. Did you want to add anything, Gopal?
In that class that you were mentioning, the honors class, one of the people they studied was Plato. And Plato in one place talks about the difference. He talks about how we are, he just suggests that we are not these bodies, but we're the soul. We're a mind or a soul within the body. And so when the teacher was presenting this and the students were hearing this, then they were pondering over this, and after hearing it, they're saying, oh, that's deep. That's very deep. So that's like chapter 2 of the Bhagavad-Gita. So this going to this point of it's more than MA, PhD. So many of these philosophers and writers like Shakespeare, they're dealing with very rudimentary, very basic themes in our philosophy. So we should never feel that our philosophy is doesn't prepare us for the rest of the world. Rather, the rest of the world is just scratching the surface of the depth of philosophy, culture, tradition that is present in our books. And so everything is there. So it serves as a very nice foundation.
Anybody is following the Kerala story? Yeah, yeah, big time, right? News over there, and it's all due to people not knowing enough of their shastra. That's why they're being converted. It's because the Hindus don't know shastra. They can't answer such basic philosophy of the other religions, right? So we need to equip our children, because we think, okay, the karmis are getting converted, but believe me, I know certain cases where devotees were being converted in another country that I visited recently, in Mauritius. There are parents who came to me that my devotees, my children became Christians. So don't think it cannot happen among devotees. If we don't give them enough of this Shastric knowledge, it can happen to them also. But of course, even if it doesn't happen to them, still, these are the kids who are supposed to empower others. Now devotees, ISKCON devotees are adding on to that Kerala story and using it as a tool to preach, right? It's because these young people, they know philosophy and they're able to use that, right? And do big time preaching on television and all. So it's more than that. It's not like we're protecting our children to be converted. We want to empower them to do big time preaching, to affect. I mean, in our life, we probably made a few devotees in our life, right? These kids will make hundreds of devotees. So we are empowering them by giving them this kind of training, so that they can come up and stand up to Kerala story out there. So these are the spiritual benefits we would be reading. You just quickly go through that. And that is really the purpose of Srimad Bhagavatam. The purpose of Srimad Bhagavatam, obviously, is not for them to become big lawyers. The purpose of reading Srimad Bhagavatam is to go back to Godhead. That is the goal of life. So, and how do you become a pure devotee? Is by developing good character, right? And this is what we take from our stories in Srimad Bhagavatam. Qualities that as parents we cannot teach them on our own. We need more powerful media for them to give these qualities that can penetrate the heart. Qualities like humility, tolerance, that we see in the story of Parikshit Maharaj, right? Now, humility is something we cannot really teach them, right, as parents. But when they get that powerful association from Parikshit Maharaj, it goes really deep, It's not just about Parikshit Maharaj being humble and not being and counter-cursing. It's more than that. It's more than that. Because he sees the plan of the Lord. In his humility, he sees that I cannot go against the current time. It's Krishna's desire that Kali Yuga come and Srimad Bhagavatam be spoken. Imagine somebody who's been cursed to die in 7 days. Why would anybody think like that? That I should worry, that obviously he's going to try to protect himself and not die in 7 days. So that humility where he's surrendering to the will of the Lord, to the plan of the Lord. And not only that, he's also thinking of Shamak Rishi, thinking about his emotions, what he's going through, rather than himself. He's going to die in 7 days, but he's not thinking about himself. He's thinking about the emotions of somebody else. It requires humility. And it's one of the jewels of bhakti, right, that we want to give our children. But you cannot give them unless you go into these stories. Layers and layers and layers of understanding. Srimad Bhagavatam cannot be given all at once. There's so many layers, right? So as children get older, they learn another layer, another layer, another layer, right? But it's powerful. They're not just about moral stories. These are not moral stories. These are not value stories that we like to project. Okay, Dhruva is about determination. It's more than determination. Determination is important, but it always doesn't work. You may be very determined, but you may not have the resources. So what's the meaning of determination, right? It's more than that. It's about his mother and how she influenced him. His Kshatriya, his going and finding the Lord was not because he was a Kshatriya in his blood, it was because of his mother, the direction that she gave him. That gave him the strength to move out of the house and find the Lord. Personality, the contrast between Suruchi and Suniti. So many lessons after lessons and lessons after lessons. You see? So Srimad Bhagavatam is not just moral stories. It's not about dharma like in the Mahabharata. It's about, being dharmic, but in a way to please Krishna. It's about Sanatana Dharma. It means the whole idea and the mood and the object is to please Krishna. And that is the ultimate dharma. This is where Srimad Bhagavatam is taking us. The story of Bali Maharaj, where he had two conflicting situations in front of him. Should I follow my guru or should I please Vamandev? What path did he take? It's a very difficult path. Vedic culture doesn't allow going against your guru, right? Yet he chose the higher path. So both of them seem correct, seemingly correct, both paths. So it's not always about good or bad. It's about two things that they're equally okay, which path to take. In front of Arjuna, there were two conflicting situations. Should I really kill my superiors, people like my grandfather Bhishma? Or should I follow Krishna, please him? Well, he chose Krishna, right? So in other words, two conflicting problems, but what do you say? Kula dharma or Sanatana dharma? What dharma to follow? So it puts children, it makes them deeply think about things, about principles, religious principles in life that make a person pleasing to Krishna. This is what attracts Krishna, right? This is what makes good leaders, good citizens. Prabhupada said these children should become leaders of the country. He didn't say they should not go forward and take part in politics. No, he said, because this is what's needed in society. People with character, right? Yudhishthira Maharaj, Parikshit Maharaj, they were all leaders in society. They weren't just sadhus sitting in an ashram. So why are we giving them good character? So that they can become good leaders in society. So they can make a difference in the world. And these type of principles can only be given through Srimad Bhagavatam. Only through Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is, we see in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the story of Narad Muni and Vyasadeva. When Narad Muni scolds Vyasadeva and says, you've written, so much literature, yet you haven't given the real thing. He says, you've done something really horrible, Jugupsitam. Imagine calling the other literatures Jugupsita. Because when you know the value of something, then everything seems of lesser value. What Shastra is saying, the value of Srimad Bhagavatam is so unique, is so high, and that is why Srila Prabhupada wanted the study of Srimad Bhagavatam for children. The whole philosophy of Bhagavad-Gita is in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's not like you don't teach them Bhagavad-Gita, but these are in the form of stories, so it becomes very engaging for our children. So many types of character training can be done, Prahlad's story, So Bhagavatam is taught by a contrast. So in other words, if something is bad, there's also positive. If Hiranyakashipu is bad, who's the hero of the story? Prahlad. So it does not demonize everything. That's what people think. Okay, such horrible stories of this bad father. So many questions are there. Oh, what is he going to think of me as a father if he's going to hear the story of Prahlad, the father? Nothing, Srimad Bhagavatam can have no ill effect. Why? Because it's taught by contrast. In that same story is all about Prahlad. And there's so many wonderful fathers in Srimad Bhagavatam. Rishabdev and his 100 sons and so many other stories, right? So in this way, by contrast, they understand, okay, if there's Hiranyakashipu in the world, how do we have to behave? We have to become Prahlad. How do you live in a world of self-serving leaders? Or become Prahlad. Sorry. Did you want to add anything, Gopal? So we'll just move on to academic benefits. So we understand that real purpose of Srimad Bhagavatam is to become a pure devotee and go back to Godhead. But the point of the whole thing is that even the study of Srimad Bhagavatam also is beneficial in areas that are not even devotional. That's the wonderful thing. For those who are worried the study of Srimad Bhagavatam is just going to simply make them pujaris in a temple, right? It's not true. Of course, it's wonderful to be a pujari. But I'm saying that, no, what Prabhupada is saying, that it can give all-round benefit even in areas that are non-devotional. Why? Because it develops in our children critical thinking abilities. You take any story, right? It's so easy to see that, right? It's not like a simple story. So many skills are needed to understand that story. The critical thinking skills. Just the Pariksha story, right? So many things are going on. So many nuances are going on. Sometimes when you do with kids, I've done I do a lot of online classes for children. And then when they finish the story, they say, wow, my mind is blow out. Because it's just so many layers. But they love it. And the type of realizations they do is amazing. Just like an adult. And you know that Krishna has captured their hearts. You know it's gone very deep. You see? So the critical thinking skills is very important. And in America, they say, a lawyer, if you want to become a good lawyer, you need philosophy. And you imagine, Bhagavatam philosophy. What kind of lawyer the kid is going to be? Par excellence. Nobody will be able to beat him, right? So any career the child wants, anything you want the child to become, engineer or whatever, training in Srimad Bhagavatam is just going to be the best for him. Okay, so I'm just going to go through the methodology of teaching. So something that I tried and it kind of worked, and there's others who are trying. So whether it's in a school, whether it's in a school situation or at home, the best, the suggestion is that we sit and have the children take turns reading translations. Okay, they don't read purports. Why? Because purports can get too long and they may get restless. So how do we give Srila Prabhupada's purports, which is really where everything is, right? Is the parents or the teachers, they read the purports ahead of time, and they use the points from the purports as in the form of discussion. Now it's not like you discuss every purport. You don't discuss it. You just pick and choose. The purports that inspire you, that will inspire the children. You can discuss those, bring those points, areas. You can even make notes on the side, the things you may want to discuss with them. But also, I want to tell you about these books. Atul, can you bring one book, please? Yeah. You may have already seen it, but it's a teamwork that we are doing. So many cantos here. Thank you. So these are the guidebooks. This is a systematic study of every chapter in Srimad Bhagavatam. We've done all the way to 6 cantos. Every chapter, systematic study. Just like an adult would study, right? So we've done this for children. But we've done it in the form of activities and stories. More like activities in order to make that philosophy digestible and child-friendly for the children. Okay, so in other words, we have a story summary, then we have discussion questions, which will help you in your discussion. Then we have, themes, key themes in the whole story. We have shloka, and then we have activities such as introspective activities, critical thinking activities, analogy activities, artistic activities, theater activities. Like for every chapter, Now you can pick and choose the activities you want. You don't have to do every one of them. And so what it helps is those activities, like for example, critical thinking activities, they help to make it easier. For example, the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, very difficult, right? Not an easy, where Krishna is given as the absolute truth with different qualities. We've taken that material and made it as an activity, as a mind map. So it becomes very easy to digest. We put Krishna in the center bubble, and then we have the other bubbles where they talk about the different qualities and then of Krishna, right? So in other words, things that are difficult, but you make them easy through activities. And suddenly, after that activity, the child knows so much about the first verse, which is so very difficult, right? So like that. So you've given it in a way that is digestible. So we've done like 6 cantos, and they're available. You can buy it as a set, So as a set, or we have extra first cantos. If you rather take the first canto, then you can do that. So we have a few sets that the publisher sent from Delhi. So you can go through that. So this will help in this methodology. These books will really help. And I know a lot of people, and they're teaching this in Vrindavan Gurukul here. And I went there, and they plan to do 6 cantos before the children finish their middle school, which is 8th grade, which is really, really quite nice. And they're using it also like an English book and Shastra, for teaching Shastra. Mayapur International School is using, and many, many Sunday schools throughout the world are using it as part of their Sunday school program. So that's something you can also think about. A lot of work has gone into it. There's wonderful, wonderful devotees throughout the world, New Zealand, Australia, and they're all very expert in their area. Some of them are English teachers, some of them are artists and computer professionals. So we have this huge talent that we pull into and create these things. It takes about a year to do 1 canto. So we've been working on this for many, many years now.
I just wanted to add that the discussing it with the child makes it fun, makes it enjoyable for the children. Otherwise, reading can then become monotonous, but the discussion part is very important. And in general, study based on Srimad Bhagavatam is very effective because of what my mother had mentioned in terms of role models. By studying the Bhagavatam, there's so many child saints, like Dhruva, Prahlad. And by reading these, the child starts to think, oh, I can be like them. They're my same age. And you see, why are there so many child role models in the Srimad Bhagavatam? Narad Muni, it's because of this reason, because it helps, it's meant for education. Prabhupada writes in the preface of the Bhagavatam, right, that it's particularly for the schools and colleges. And when it enters into the schools and colleges, then the Bhagavatam will bring about a revolution in society. And especially for second generation ISKCON devotees, this is the real need. We get a lot of kirtan, we get nice association, but the philosophy, the understanding of the philosophy is what grounds us and also gives us the confidence to explain it to others. So the Shastra part is very important. In terms of academics, comprehension is very important. English comprehension is something that's emphasized a lot. And just the nature of the text is such that you have to read it and understand it. So discussion encourages comprehension. And on the yearly exams that we would have, they would have a comprehension section, and we always did very well in those sections, because that's the process. You read it, and then you discuss it, you make sure you understand it, you discuss it again. So it's the practice of reading something and trying to understand it deeply. Like, what's the message here? What is being said here? Regarding role models, it encourages good character. Like in the case of Dhruva Maharaj, Dhruva is envious of his brother. He's distressed about the behavior of his brother. And actually we would think that, well, he's not envious, his stepmother's envious. But when Dhruva Maharaj goes to his mother Suniti, the first thing she tells him is, give up your envy. You're envious of your brother. This is why you're feeling so angry. That why he is the favorite child and I am not. And she says, give up your envy. Why? And then she gives a reason for it. She says, it's good to give up your envy because if anyone who got anything good in this world received it because they pleased the Lord. Your father became king because he pleased the Lord. Your grandfather Swayambhuva Manu became Manu because he pleased the Lord. Your great-grandfather Brahma became Brahma because he pleased the Lord. So you're unhappy right now because you haven't pleased the Lord. So if you also please the Lord, then you'll get your heart's desire. So there's nothing to be envious of anyone. Therefore, go to the forest and find the Lord. And this is such a nice message for children because it's natural, we see it so, especially in Kali Yuga, for a brother to be envious of another brother, so the sibling rivalry, a friend to be envious of another friend. And the Bhagavatam is giving a practical solution on how a child can overcome his envy of another person, another child, student, brother, sister, by this knowledge that, well, if I please the Lord, I can also be just as successful as my friends and siblings.
Thank you, Gopal. That is a good example. So there's many examples like this in the Srimad Bhagavatam. I know one example that I'm going to quickly end with is the story of Jai and Vijay when I did with the kids. It was just amazing. Just that one story, they found it was so much fun for them while they were learning so much. How where I asked them, I challenged them to tell me who was right, whether the four Kumaras were right or whether Jai was just right. And they had so much fun because there were so many different, reasons why you'd say one is right versus the other. The four Kumaras were, right. They had an eagerness to see the Lord, so they should not have stopped him. But Jai Vijay was simply doing their duty, right? And then why did they get angry? They were sages. Was it okay to get angry? And that too, to curse, give such a heavy curse for something so small? Did it, was it balancing? Like the type of curse versus the crime was very little, right? So, and then when they did give the curse, then how did Jai and Vijay react to it? Did they counter curse and say, we are special devotees of the Lord? Did you see how intimate we are? We are on the 7th gate. We're really close to Narayan. I'm going to counter curse. They could. They were very exalted devotees, right? Did they counter curse? No. In fact, they were so humble. It was paining their heart that they had to go leave the Lord and go to the material world. But they're praying to the four Kumaras to help them not forget the Lord, even as demons. Okay, and I remember that the kids went through so much discussion as to on the anger thing. Was that good anger, bad anger? And then you bring in other stories of good anger, Hanuman and his good anger, bad anger. So many things they're learning. I know one child had such a big anger issue. Just such a nice boy, but he just had an anger issue from his last life or something. And then I told the mother, I said, just read Srimad Bhagavatam. And you won't believe in a year or two, all that anger went away. So it is a solution for all the problems, when Srila Prabhupada says that. Anyway, so this discussion can go on for a long time. So we're going to stop here with the second part and see, because the third part, I've pretty much covered a lot on the third part. So if you have any questions on the second part, please let me know. Let me tell you about this amazing, in this age group also it's very, very effective. Don't think it's just for older kids, on every age group. So we can teach it to our toddlers, to small children. And how do we teach to our small children? It's through pictures. Obviously they cannot read, right? We show them pictures and we point at and tell them the story and keep repeating. They love repetition. You open the picture, pictures in the Bhagavatam, show them different things, tell them the story in the picture. And it's really nice for them, right? Then we go on to the older group and we think, oh, they still cannot read. I don't know. Should we just do some, little children's books? No, read Bhagavatam with them. Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavatam. They cannot read because there's something special about Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavatam. They're very potent. So they cannot read, so you read to them some translations, and then you give them the story, create the whole story for them. I remember spending like about 45 minutes with a 4-year-old girl and doing that story in Prahlad's story, chapter 4. And no, I forget which story it was. And she was sitting there mesmerized, just here. And then I would, challenge her and ask questions and everything. And I was surprised how much she took in. So much they take in. It's unbelievable. There's one boy that I knew that I was teaching him, doing Bhagavatam with him, and he was only 4.5. And we're doing this Dhruva story where Dhruv Maharaj, the plane comes to get him, right? To get him and take him back to Godhead. This is towards the end. He's seen the Lord, he comes back home, and then, and the Lord says, no, you can't come to the spiritual world right now, you have to become king. So he becomes king for 36,000 years. And when that period is finished, then that plane comes in. The Viman comes to take him back to Godhead. He's done everything that Krishna wanted him to do. It was time to go. And there's a beautiful description of this plane with the associates there. So this little boy, he told me, well, that plane is so beautiful, I want to be on that plane, I want to go back to Godhead right now to Krishna. Then I didn't take him seriously, he's just a child, I said, okay, one day you can go. Then he said, no. And he wouldn't let me go on. I want to go on that plane. Then I started thinking, okay, what am I going to say? Then I said, okay, you can go. But remember, your parents won't go. They can't go with you. Is that okay? And he started thinking for it for a little while, and he says, you know what, I'm going to wait because I don't want to make the same mistake as Ajamal did. You may have heard me telling this story. It's one of my favorite stories. And how come he's saying Ajamal? Anybody got the connection? He says, I don't want to go right now. I'll wait because I don't want to make the same mistake as Ajamal did. Anybody caught it? In the story of Ajamal, he fell down, as you know. I don't have to go over the whole story. He fell down with a prostitute, right? And then the Yamadutas came to get him, right? Vishnudutas saved him. He got a second chance. He went to Haridwar. He knew, okay, I'm going to give up all my bad habits, now work on myself. He goes to Haridwar, and but before he goes, one of the first things he does, he regrets. Oh my gosh, what did I do? And the first thing that he regrets is, how did I neglect my old parents and leave my chaste wife? He was so regretful of doing that. And this boy, if you do that story, it comes. It's one of the verses, right? So this boy remembered that, and he connected the two stories together. And this is 4.5-year-old boy. So what can I say, Very powerful. Bhagavatam is so powerful. And that gives real character. Talking about gratefulness. How do you teach a child to be grateful to his parents? How do you teach a devotee to be grateful to other devotees? How do you teach them? You can't, if you just tell children to be grateful, they're not going to accept it. They just forget it. They'll just run away. Right? But to teach them these values through Bhagavatam is very powerful. Right? So that's the whole point. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop here. Anybody has any questions?
One thing that I notice about Sita and Balaram, Sita is now almost 6 years old. Balaram is 3, so he's still just in his 3 age. But Sita, she's like older and kind of more thoughtful at this time. And on the days when we do Srimad Bhagavatam, like when we're doing it and we're not busy or traveling, then she's so much more peaceful. Like we do some Bhagavatam and then she'll be peaceful. She won't misbehave, she'll be, her mind is very happy and peaceful. And when we don't do it, then she's, kind of fidgety and angry and like disturbed. So just with her, I've seen it's increased my faith that when we do Bhagavatam, then she's just like so much happier and kind of satisfied. So that's there. Also, I wanted to mention that the third one is preaching is the essence, and we used to go to the local elementary school and high school, and to kids our age, we would give them a small presentation. Like we would set it up, devotees would set it up, and then we'd give it a nice presentation. And that preaching deepened our faith so much. By sharing Krishna consciousness, children actually, their faith in, because then all of a sudden they're explaining to others, and then they're like, they start thinking, how can I really make this understandable? And in doing that, they start to understand it. Or they start to think that this is my philosophy, I'm trying to explain to others. So preaching is also a very powerful way of engaging children and having them become very kind of deep in their Krishna consciousness.
Yes, Gopal. Because what happens is that, like I was saying earlier, as they get older, they start losing it, right? That faith becomes weaker and weaker because they're young, and and a lot of peer pressure and all those things happen. So preaching kind of helps them survive through all that. When we did a seminar in Chowpatty, one of the biggest concerns of the brahmacharis there was how to save these children. The parents were such amazing devotees, they were doing so much service, but not their children. They're staying behind at home, not even coming to the temple while they came to do their service. They were very concerned. So in other words, it is a very big problem to keep them as devotees, Initially, they're always wonderful devotees. When they're little, they're just so perfectly Krishna consciousness, right? But then wait till they get older. That's where the challenges start, right? So we have to always remember that. Always remember how to keep their faith, make them strong. And like Gopal was saying, it really helps. And you went through that, right? It's just like we were doing so much. A lot of our homeschooling was just all about that. So much of it was all about that. So, and there's so many ways you can do it. School programs, and besides that, interfaith services, of course. Temple and home programs also really help a lot. When children are given opportunities to take leadership roles, it's very important. In any area, whether it's, sound system or, developing a sound system, or whether it's giving a class or wherever, but children should be allowed to take leadership roles where they feel, they feel empowered. They feel this, like Gopal said, this is my philosophy, and I'm proud to be a devotee. That's the feeling we have to give to them. I'm proud to be a devotee. Why? Because it's my philosophy. So when they were able to go to different places and speak about Krishna, that's when their faith intensified. When people stand there and clap for you, then they say, oh, okay, they're clapping for me, I'm a devotee. So that opportunity has to be given. And it could be in different things. Different places work differently. It's not one formula for everybody. All right. Okay, so I know it's past the time, so I just want to stop here.
Any final questions, comments?
Actually, this is not currently working on 6th canto. It's already done. It's here with us, 6th canto. Sorry, I was supposed to update this. So we already have the 6th canto on the table. So the set is 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th and 6th. Okay. And they are meant to be for children older, as the cantos are getting. So like 6th canto is, is like 12 and above. There's no way, because the material gets really very, but you can adapt it for younger children. all these books can be adapted for younger children or even for older children. Even many adults are using it, so it can be adapted. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. We would like to thank Mataji and Prabhuji by loudly chanting Hari Bol 3 times. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. And we are very, very grateful to have you both and give us such a wonderful insight. And I'm sure a lot of mothers are taking back so much back today. And I personally, I have used Mataji's homeschooling book. It's wonderful. My daughter was trained under her. I took inspiration from Mataji's homeschooling book, and it had really helped me personally, and also the Srimad Bhagavatam books that Mataji's worked on. So thank you so much, Mataji and Prabhu, once again. We would like to just offer a small token of appreciation.
Thank you so much, Mataji and Prabhuji. Mataji had been working on this seminar since almost 10 days, organizing when to come, how to come, and how to do it. We are very grateful. I feel like every week we should have such sessions so that we get boosted and recharged and train our kids. It was so soothing to hear you, really, a really very sincere and what can I say, very exemplary devotee. Thank you so much, Mataji. Mataji, can you please give Lakshmi Priya Mataji and Kamala Mataji? I request you to give a little bit prasad from our sides, from the community parents.